Hello, welcome to this episode of ThinkerThemer. I am Maggie, the themer, and this is my beautiful fiance, Amy, the thinker. She's all about mechanics, and I'm all about the theme. Today we're going to be looking at the game Roads and Boats, which is a Splotter game, and a lot of things happen with Splotter games. And it's designed by, okay, this is going to be a tricky one because I'm terrible at this pronunciation, but I'm going to give it my best. Joris Wiersinga and Jeroen Doumen.
I think that's better than I could have done it.
I probably butchered that, and I'm so sorry about that. In Roads and Boats, you are playing, well, they say that you're kind of building a civilization, but really it's more about logistics of transportation. From starting out with just some very humble donkeys, building your way up to an incredible empire of logistics where you're quite literally building roads and building boats to transfer resources by land and sea.
Yeah.
So how do we actually play the game?
And well, look, this game is 21 years old. It came out in 1999, so way back, especially given the number of games that get launched every year. This is such a throwback. And recently the anniversary edition came out, and it was actually the box art, the size of the box and the box art that we were like, what is this? Yeah. And we are a fan of Splotter games. We're a fan of heavier games, and we don't mind, a little bit of being splotted. And this one,
it's a thing.
One has a bit of it. So let me tell you about it. The first thing you'll notice is that the board is actually covered by this perspex screen, and that in and of itself is just like amazing. There's nothing else like it. It reminds me, like, if you are a child of the 80s and 90s, of the overhead projector sitting through a lecture with a lecturer like writing things out on the
good old days.
Oh, the good old days. But anyway, so this game is played on a board that is constructed with hex tiles, and these hex tiles represent different types of terrain. So you've got obviously like sea, and then you've got rock, and you've got mountain, shore, and what's the last one? Woods and woods.
Yeah, the woods.
And so all of these different areas can produce different types of goods. So if you're a fan of Euros, that's pretty standard. What is really interesting about this game is that it's not just goods that you're producing, but you're also upgrading your buildings and technologies in order to upgrade your transportation system to then be able to quickly move all of those goods around the board. And starting, you have 3 donkeys, and that is one of my favorite attributes of this game. Is like, it feels like you are building up, because you start with these 3 humble donkeys, and these donkeys can only move 1 space at a time, and they can carry 2 things on their back. And then once you have the right resources, you can start building roads. And the way that you build roads is to use a whiteboard marker and to actually construct the road on the whiteboard, perspex between 2 of the tiles. So this helps you to create a network that you can travel along, but the catch is that nothing in this game is yours and yours alone. So if you are traveling along these roads, so can your opponent. So in putting roads in place, you're also making it more efficient for your opponent. Yeah. And when you're building things, so what you're going to be doing is you start off with fairly humble, resources and then you're building, for example, a what's this called? A mine.
The quarry.
The quarry.
Yep.
And mines and things that generate other resources or help you generate resources faster. And then you're going to be using those and collecting those to make buildings that, will help you upgrade your donkey to a wagon that can move further, can carry more things. And really you're just trying to get your engine going. And at the very beginning, you're starting slow, but quicker and quicker, you start to build up all these buildings. You start to get different types of transporters. The interesting thing as well is that as you build things, so for example, I've built here in our game a wagon factory that allows you to trade in one of your donkeys with a couple of planks of wood for a wagon. And when you you do that, the wagon can then move further and carry more things along the board, as I mentioned. But that wagon factory could be used by Maggie. So Maggie could bring one of her donkeys over, carry some planks with her, and then use it and turn into a wagon as well. And so there's this real shared economy. The other thing is that when you collect resources, they don't go into a resource bank. They're there on the board. And if you don't have a transporter carrying them around, they are fair game.
Up for grabs.
Up for grabs. And so the other thing that's really interesting about the mechanics of this game is that as we move through the round, it goes through some set stages. So production first, then you're moving everything, then you're building anything you want. And then the final phase of the round is building this wonders board. And so what you're doing is here you can see the yellow is Maggie and the black is me. And every time you move, every time the phase comes around, you are adding, if you want, a tile to a row. And once we both have an opportunity to do that, there's a neutral tile that gets placed. And that's like not only the timer in the game, but at the end of the game, it's worth a whole heap of resources as a row-based area control game. Yeah. Sorry, what did I say?
Resources. Yeah, it's worth points.
It's worth points. It's worth points.
You pay with resources though, so that's, yeah.
I know, I've just got resources on the brain because have you seen how many, there's so many resources in this game.
Endless fiddliness, which I love.
Like so many resources. But anyway, so yeah, sorry, you're paying with resources. And so what that creates is this really interesting tension between using the resources to help you advance further in the game through all those upgrades, or using resources to play this area control game off to the side because you're looking at it and you're like, oh, no, I don't want to let her have that row.
Yeah, it's a row control game.
And in order to be able to do that, the resources have to be on your home tile. There has to be a transporter there. So that creates a lot of competitive tension actually, and it is really just pretty cool.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the theme or the thematic integration. This is such a quirky game, and I absolutely love it. So let's talk about the components. It has so many components.
So many.
It felt like it took me forever when we first got it to like punch everything out, trying to figure out what everything was. I love the actual wooden meeples. So like the donkey's really cute, and the wagons and all of those things are the trucks. Like all of those components are really cute. The artwork is odd. It kind of fits the odd quirkiness of the game.
Yeah.
But it's almost like 5-year-old drawing sort of, or abstract type artwork. I actually I was a bit put off by it at first. I'm like, what is going on?
Especially now because, you're comparing it to all these deluxeified games and then you open this box and all it is like cardboard tiles and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah, but like the actual hexes themselves are a bit like, what? Like what? Having said that though, like the more I've played this game and the more you kind of get to experience the world of it, it's like I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah, it is perfect. With all the oddities. Thematically, it's another game where again you are quite literally, you're not really building a civilization. And they say it themselves, like it's about logistics, specifically transportation. And that is exactly what I feel like when I'm playing this game. I am just thinking about the logistics of what am I going to try to build and what are the things, like how am I going to get stuff there to build it. And so it is quite thematic from that point of view. Also, every component, like obviously in terms of what the buildings do to produce whatever they produce, all of that makes sense. The only bizarre thing about it is the way that you unlock your technologies by doing research. You need to spend 2 geese and you need to spend a paper in a piece of paper. There's no real explanation, or at least not that I like, and I can reach for theme. The closest I could get to is like, well, paper and the animals, I guess it's almost like scientific studies, and you're like, real reach there.
I think they joke about it too.
And then it's like, and the other thing that happens is the factories and the buildings, they'll produce if they have the right input, even if no one is there. And the same thing happens with the 2 geese and the paper. They will, if they're left in a tile by themselves, they will evaporate, and essentially a research will happen and it'll go into the ether. And they do make a little joke about, this is sort of like surpasses metaphysical understanding. And anyways, I really enjoy that. So thematically, it's not an immersive thematic game, but it is thematically logical. It does make sense.
And also I like that feeling of progress. Like if you were in a transportation company and you started it with some humble donkeys, and then eventually you had rafts and boats and trucks, and like it feels like you are kind of working towards that. I mean, you run out of time very quickly.
Yeah. And the actual fact that you are building that, like you're drawing the road, it's like you are actually like that's
there's something beautiful about just like the pen and actually constructing something, and then it feels like a one-off kind of board every time you do that.
I also love this sense, like you said, that sense of creation, like feeling like you start this game with, just your donkeys, and it's like, I have no idea what this is going to look like by the end, or what I'm going to build, or what strategy I'm going to go towards.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what it feels like.
Yeah, let's talk about what it feels like. Let's talk about those moments where we've spent 10 years together, but you've almost broken up with me.
I don't think that's actually happened with this game.
With this game. Maybe we'll do a special list of top 10 games that almost broke us up.
That made our relationship stronger.
Yeah, I would like to talk about that as well, because there's one important thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about the overview, and that is everything is shared in this game, but you also have the ability to build walls, and these walls are creating a one-way barrier only for the person who is that color to move through. And so you can put these up and it stops the other player being able to get through until they've got the right resources to break down your wall. And then you can even reinforce those walls to make it even harder.
I could break down her wall and then build my own wall and make it even bigger.
Make a double
stronger.
wall. Yeah. And so we were joking because we actually, before this review, we played out a full game. And there was a moment where, because you don't know what other players are going to do, I want to say that in this game, you could play it completely ignoring each other. Yeah. You could just build up your own little thing, do your own
solitaire,
thing. Multiplayer solitaire your heart out. And for that reason, I think you need to choose your opponent wisely in this, because it's definitely, it's kind of like Scythe in that you could be like all about the battle or doing your own thing. That is exactly what this is like. And the threat is real.
Especially with this one. She loves being able to, and I would say this, or it's like, if it comes down to you gaining more points or just like hurting my play a little bit, she'll always go for that. That's just how I feel.
That is just how you feel.
My own paranoid.
Because I was doing my own thing in our game, and so was Maggie. And it got to the point where Maggie was actually accelerating through to better transporters quicker than I was. And the way she was doing that was by bringing all these rafts in to like pull out all of the gold from the mining area. And so I started...
The mine that I built, I wasn't coming anywhere near your mines.
And so my walls, I started heading over there with a donkey, and she didn't notice until
I didn't notice.
You noticed once my donkey was there. You're like, hey, your donkey's
But this is like from my vantage point, I couldn't actually see the donkey because it was sitting behind the mine, and I was like, what's that donkey? Like it was literally like.
He was not hiding, he was just on the board.
Doing it.
Anyway, the point is I wasn't going over there to mess up your game. I was going over there to build some walls along the shoreline to slow her down, because I could see the writing on the wall, actually, that I only had donkeys which can only move one space at a time unless there's a road there, and then they can move two, but they're very slow. And so I needed to try and slow her down so that I could work out a way to catch up. And I think that's what's really clever about this game, actually, because if you spend your whole time trying to attack someone else, it's gonna drain your resources. And it's going to cost you time to get over to their area of the board. It's just not worth it. It really isn't worth it unless you can sneakily put up a wall or two. The other thing that's good for walls is not to stop them getting to their own stuff, which was what I was trying to do, but
it's just mean for the mean sake.
That was funny. Not mean. It was strategy. The other thing is that to protect your own stuff from other people coming in and taking resources, and so that, like, we've only ever played it at 2 players, and it is a brilliant...
and solo, which I'll talk about later.
It's a brilliant 2-player game, though, because if you are just doing... It's like doing your own thing in company, and then ultimately who can do a better job of that. But it is such a optimization puzzle. And I was saying to Maggie that like the first third of it I don't really enjoy because it starts really slow, and if you're like me, you're not someone, I've spoken about this before, but other games where it's very resource heavy and you're trading things for things and it's very fiddly. This is the ultimate fiddly. When you have lots of transporters and you're trying to work out which ones have you moved and which ones haven't you moved, and then you've got things producing things, like it is a mess, but it is a beautiful mess. Like there is something about this game that is just pure optimization and competitiveness that is just so fun. Like the first third is a bit boring because you're working up, but then the second third you're like, wow, I'm actually generating a lot of resources. I can afford to build all of these buildings now. Which ones do I choose? And then the end is a really tight race when you realize they're producing coins and all of these valuable things over on their side, and what am I doing with my life? And am I winning on this like area control?
What am I doing
with my life? Where have I spent all my time? But the other thing about this game is if you're a fan of Splotter games, you can absolutely be splotted in this game. Splotted, meaning that if you make a couple of wrong moves, if you don't construct the right buildings early on, or you just get caught up doing something random and you get left behind, it's going to be a long game for you, and you're probably going to lose. And you can probably see the writing on the wall about halfway through, and then you have to play out the rest of the game.
Sometimes immediately. Like we've actually locked ourselves out where we literally
at one point we both locked ourselves out.
One of the earlier games. Like, we didn't build the right thing, and now there's no way that we can get the stuff that we need for so that was the ultimate being spluttered.
It was,
but like that can happen.
And the other great thing about this game is because all of this is modular, there are so many setups that you can use. There are setups that come in the rulebook, but there are also so many on the BGG forums. Yeah. In fact, I was looking at one the other day that someone's written, which is like Santa, like it's Christmas themed. And so there's all these like challenges, and Maggie's been playing it solo.
Yeah. So the experience of it solo is I'm going to say it's very similar in terms of what you're trying to achieve. They are treated as puzzles. So again, it's almost like suggested configurations of the board. And then there's a high score that you're trying to beat or match. Or at least get, within, I think they say like within 75% of that high score. Obviously, playing it solo, even though you're still technically doing the same things, you have fewer rounds, so it's very much just about optimizing things. The way the mines work is a little bit different. It's sort of a little bit more fair in terms of the even distribution of things like gold versus iron, but there's obviously no one else. There's no threat of an Amy coming to take your stuff. So I find that when I play it solo,
boring.
I actually really like that. I can just relax into what's the strategy. It just becomes entirely about optimizing that puzzle and finding, okay, if I do a wagon strategy, if I do a sea or water-based transportation strategy, how does that play with this particular map? So I really enjoy that because there's quite literally like endless possibilities, both for multiplayer, because you can actually create your own map obviously, but also with solo, it's then pushing yourself to find the best score.
Okay, so who do we think should own a game like this? I actually think this is a game that would have really broad appeal with a couple of caveats, and the caveats for me are you going to be okay with the fiddliness of this game? There is no getting around it. The carrying, I'm trying my hardest to get the donkey to carry the resources.
It's really hard.
And, it's actually staying on there. That's weird.
Yeah. It's more when it's carrying multiples.
But when I'm moving it around, okay, there we go. Yeah. When I'm moving it around, the resources are always going all over the place, and you kind of need to keep track of which transporters are carrying which resources.
I wish they had the same thing as with Scythe, where you have the bigger board version.
Yeah.
Then a lot of times when you have too many resources on a hex, it's just impossible.
Just stuff going everywhere. And so that, this is a really old game. And for that reason, I forgive kind of some of the clunkiness of it and some of the artwork of it. But if you can get over that, there is such a charm here, but it's also a really difficult puzzle because of the fact that you need to build things quickly. You need to work out the right succession of transport planning in order to optimize and beat your opponent. And I think that it would play because everyone's doing every step at the same time, I think that you could easily add more players and it wouldn't add too much downtime, even though it is like kind of a bit fiddly. But if you're into, you can, and for the reason that you can play it like multiplayer solitaire, or you can be really disruptive and go attack each other.
Yeah.
There's always, well, for us, because we could lean either way into that, Maggie's probably a little more solitaire. I'm probably a little more using attacks as part of my strategy if I need to. I'm more than happy to do that, not just to annoy Maggie. Partly to annoy Maggie. Just because I can.
Just because
I'm a little bit more
enjoy
opportunistic.
It. Like, you actually quite,
it is
that
quite
is
funny
exciting
until you
for
stop talking to me. But if you, so no matter which kind of play style you have, there's something here for everyone, I think. And because there is that constant threat of someone taking over, there is a little bit of paranoia. Like even when Maggie's getting too close to me, I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. Do I have enough things over there?
Come take over your stuff.
I know, but there's that constant threat because you can.
Yeah.
And because your stuff is so like publicly just lying around. Very vulnerable. So yeah, I think there's something here for everyone. And I really think this is such a classic. Like there are a lot of games that we play that are older games where we're like, oh, maybe it's not as relevant to today.
They feel dated and they feel like, done. But
Team Splotter, I mean, they are just like true leaders.
As you said, any element of this that feels a little bit old or like quirky, it's just more endearing than anything else.
It is. And the fact that there's just endless replayability and you get to draw on something. I mean,
we haven't even gone into the expansions yet, so
even more. And you don't really know who's winning until the very end. And with this area control game, it's so nice and tight. This is so shouldn't be my thing, but I adore this game. I really do. And don't be scared off by the rules overhead. The rule book is a bit of it's difficult. Yeah. But there's plenty of online resources now. Yeah. And also it says like 3 to 4 hours. Yeah. I don't think we've ever had a game. Maybe the first one, not even that. Like I think we can knock over a game of this in an hour. Yeah. Hour and a half maybe. Yeah. Yeah, and so, like, there's nothing stopping us from getting this out, aside from remembering how it plays generally, and how all the resources work.
It's like riding a bike.
It is. But that's our review of Roads and Boats, in particular the anniversary edition. I should say, we haven't even gotten to the expansion that comes with that box, which is etc., because we've just had so much fun with the base game, and it feels so pure and amazing that we haven't needed to add anything else in. If you enjoyed this review, please hit like. It really helps us with our channel. Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can hear from us about more games. But anyway, we're still trying to get as many done in 2020, so a few more to go. But we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.